The mate bond ceremony. The full moon hung heavy in the sky, casting silver light across the shadow moon pack gathering. Sarah stood at the edge of the crowd, her heart pounding so hard she thought everyone could hear it. Tonight was the mate bond ceremony, the night when wolves who had reached maturity would finally discover their destined partners. She smoothed down her simple blue dress, suddenly feeling underdressed compared to the other she-wolves in their silk and jewels. But Sarah had never cared much for fancy things. As the pack healer, she spent her days in the medicine den, grinding herbs and tending wounds. Her hands were stained with plant oils, her fingernails permanently darkened from working with roots and bark. Maybe tonight everything changes, her best friend Maya whispered beside her, squeezing her hand. Maybe you'll find your mate and finally get the respect you deserve. Sarah smiled weakly. She had served the Shadow Moon pack faithfully for 5 years since her mother's death. She had healed countless wolves, stayed up through endless nights caring for the sick and injured, and asked for nothing in return except a small room and enough food to survive. Yet the pack still treated her like she was invisible, like her work meant nothing because she wasn't a strong warrior or from a powerful family. Alpha Dominic stood at the center of the gathering, tall and commanding. He was everything an alpha should be, strong, handsome, with dark hair and eyes that could freeze a wolf in place. Every unmated she-wolf in the pack wanted him. Sarah had tended his wounds after battles, had seen him at his most vulnerable, but she had never allowed herself to hope for anything more. The ceremony began. Elder Patricia called forward the young wolves one by one. The air filled with gasps and cheers as mates found each other, drawn together by the invisible pull of the bond. Sarah watched couples embrace, saw the joy in their eyes, and felt a deep ache in her chest. Then she felt it. A pulling sensation in her heart, warm and insistent, like a rope tied around her soul. Her wolf stirred inside her, more alert than she had ever been. The pull grew stronger, undeniable, leading her gaze directly to Alpha Dominic. No. It couldn't be. But Dominic was looking at her too, his eyes wide with shock. The entire pack fell silent as they noticed. The alpha and the healer, bound by fate. Sarah's legs moved on their own, carrying her forward through the parting crowd. Every eye was on her. She felt exposed, vulnerable, like a rabbit surrounded by predators. But the mate bond urged her forward, filling her with warmth and hope. She stopped a few feet from Dominic. Up close, she could see the conflict raging in his eyes. He felt it too, she knew he did. The bond between them was undeniable, a golden thread connecting their souls. Alpha, she whispered, her voice barely audible. I feel it. The bond. For a moment, just a moment, something soft flickered across Dominic's face. But then his expression hardened into stone. He took a deliberate step backward, and that single movement felt like a knife to her heart. No, he said, his voice cold and loud enough for everyone to hear. This is impossible. There must be a mistake. The public humiliation. Sarah felt the blood drain from her face. Around them, the pack began to whisper. She heard the words clearly: weak, unsuitable, lowborn. Each word was another cut. Dominic, she said quietly, using his name for the first time ever. Please. The moon goddess doesn't make mistakes. We're mates. I know you feel it. His jaw clenched. What I feel is disappointment. I am the alpha of the Shadow Moon pack. I need a strong Luna by my side, someone who can fight, who can lead. Not a. He looked her up and down with barely concealed disgust. Not a healer who can barely shift properly. The words hit like physical blows. Sarah's wolf whimpered inside her, confused and hurt. It was true that her wolf was smaller than others, slower to emerge, but that had never mattered when she was saving lives, when her knowledge of herbs had pulled wolves back from death's door. I have served this pack faithfully, she said, her voice shaking but growing stronger. I have saved lives, including yours. I've given everything. And I appreciate your service, Dominic interrupted, his tone now formal and dismissive. But service as a healer does not make you qualified to be Luna. I need strength. I need power. I need someone the pack can respect. He turned to the crowd, his voice rising. The moon goddess has tested me tonight, but I will not fail my pack by accepting an unsuitable mate. I, Alpha Dominic of the Shadow Moon Pack, hereby reject the mate bond with Sarah Winters. The formal words of rejection hung in the air. Sarah felt the bond begin to tear, a ripping sensation in her chest like her heart was being pulled from her body. She gasped, doubling over from the pain. Maya rushed forward to support her, but Sarah barely noticed. Through her tears, she saw Dominic turn toward another she-wolf. Alara, the pack's strongest female warrior. Beautiful, powerful, from a prominent family. Everything Sarah wasn't. Alara, Dominic said, his voice warm in a way it had never been with Sarah. You have proven yourself time and again. You are strong, capable, and worthy. I choose you as my Luna. Alara smiled triumphantly and walked to Dominic's side. She shot Sarah a look of pure contempt before kissing the alpha in front of everyone. The pack erupted in cheers. No one seemed to care that Sarah was on her knees, sobbing from the pain of a severed mate bond. No one except Maya, who held her as she broke apart. The decision to leave. Sarah didn't remember how she got back to her small room in the healing den. She spent 3 days there, curled up in bed as her body and soul tried to recover from the rejection. The severed mate bond left a hollow ache in her chest that no herb could cure. Maya brought her food and water, sat with her in silence when words were too much. On the 3rd day, Sarah finally sat up and looked around her tiny room, the narrow bed, the shelf of her mother's old journals, the dried herbs hanging from the ceiling. I can't stay here, she said quietly. Maya looked at her with worry. Sarah, you're still recovering. Give it time. Maybe. Time won't change anything, Sarah interrupted. Dominic made his choice. Every time I see him with Alara, every time the pack looks at me with pity or contempt, it will tear the wound open again. She stood up, her legs shaky but determined. My mother always told me that I was meant for something more. Maybe it's time I found out what that is. Where will you go? Maya asked, tears in her eyes. I don't know. Away from here. Somewhere I can start over, where no one knows I was rejected, where I can be more than just the weak healer. Sarah began pulling her few possessions from the shelf, her mother's journals, her collection of healing herbs, a small knife, a change of clothes. Maya helped her pack in silence. As dawn approached, the two friends embraced one final time. You're stronger than they know, Maya whispered. Stronger than you know. Go find yourself, Sarah. And when you do, make them all regret underestimating you. Into the unknown. Sarah left the Shadow Moon territory under the cover of darkness. She knew the paths through the forest well from her herb-gathering trips, but she had never ventured beyond the pack borders alone. It was dangerous. Rogue wolves roamed these areas, wolves who had been exiled or had chosen to live outside pack law. The first 2 days passed uneventfully. She walked during the day, slept in trees at night, and rationed the dried meat Maya had packed for her. But on the 3rd day, as she crossed through a narrow valley, she caught the scent of other wolves. Rogues. Her heart began to race. She tried to move quietly, to slip past unnoticed, but her smaller wolf had never been good at stealth. A branch cracked under her foot, and suddenly 3 wolves emerged from the trees, all male, all larger than her, with the wild look of those who lived by violence. Well, the largest one said, his voice rough. What do we have here? A little pack wolf, all alone. Where's your protection, sweetheart? Sarah's hand went to the knife at her belt. I'm just passing through. I don't want trouble. The rogues laughed. She doesn't want trouble, one mocked. That's too bad, because we do. They began to circle her. Sarah's wolf urged her to shift, to run, but she knew she couldn't outrun them. Her mind raced through her options. Then she remembered something her mother had once told her: a healer knows both how to cure and how to harm. Remember that, my daughter. As the largest rogue lunged at her, Sarah threw a handful of powder directly into his face, a mixture of ground peppers and irritating herbs she kept for emergencies. He howled, clawing at his eyes. The other two hesitated, and Sarah used that moment to shift partially, letting her wolf strength flow through her as she slashed with her knife. She didn't fight to win. She fought to survive, to escape. And somehow, through desperation and luck, she managed to break free and run. She ran until her lungs burned, until her legs gave out, until she collapsed beside a stream at the edge of a territory she didn't recognize. As she lay there, gasping and bleeding from minor wounds, she realized something profound. She had survived. Alone, without her pack, without an alpha to protect her, she had faced rogues and lived. Maybe she was stronger than anyone had ever given her credit for. Maybe she was stronger than she had ever given herself credit for. The sanctuary. When Sarah finally raised her head, she saw a village in the distance. It was smaller than the Shadowmoon territory, nestled in a valley surrounded by protective mountains. Smoke rose from chimneys, and she could hear the distant sounds of life, children playing, people talking. She dragged herself to her feet and stumbled toward the village. At the entrance, 2 guards stopped her. "State your business," one said, not unkindly. "I'm a healer," Sarah managed. "I'm looking for sanctuary. Just for a few days, to rest and recover. I can work. I can help your sick and injured in exchange for food and shelter." The guards exchanged glances. "This is Silverbrook, neutral territory. Elder Thorn makes decisions about newcomers. Wait here." They left her standing at the gate, and Sarah tried not to collapse from exhaustion. After what felt like an eternity, an old man approached. He was ancient, with a long white beard and eyes that seemed to see everything. But his smile was warm. "A healer, they tell me," he said in a voice like rustling leaves. "We can always use skilled hands. But tell me, young one, why does a pack wolf travel alone through rogue territories?" Sarah met his eyes, and something in his gaze made her want to tell the truth. "I was rejected by my mate. By my alpha. I left my pack because I couldn't bear to stay where I wasn't wanted." Elder Thorn studied her for a long moment. Then he did something unexpected. He laughed, a warm, delighted sound. "Oh, child," he said, still chuckling. "You have no idea what you really are, do you? Come. Rest. Recover. And when you're ready, I'll show you that your alpha rejected the most valuable thing his pack ever had." He turned and walked into the village, and after a moment's hesitation, Sarah followed. Behind her, the gates of Silverbrook closed, shutting away her old life. Ahead lay something new, something unknown. And for the first time since the rejection, Sarah felt a tiny spark of hope kindle in her chest. Part 2, The Transformation. The truth about her blood. Sarah spent her first week in Silverbrook recovering. Elder Thorn had given her a small cottage at the edge of the village, simple but comfortable. She treated minor injuries for the villagers, helped with illnesses, and slowly began to feel useful again. But she couldn't shake the feeling that the elder was watching her, waiting for something. On the 8th day, he came to her cottage just after dawn. "Walk with me," he said simply. They walked in silence through the forest until they reached a clearing with an ancient stone circle. The stones were covered in moss and carved with symbols Sarah had never seen before. "Do you know what you are?" Elder Thorn asked suddenly. Sarah frowned. "I'm a healer. A wolf from the Shadowmoon pack, though not anymore." "That's what you do and where you're from," the elder corrected gently. "But it's not what you are." He gestured to the stones. "These marks are from the old language, from before the packs divided. They speak of the moon's chosen, wolves born with the ancient gift of true healing." I don't understand, Sarah said, her heart beginning to race. Your mother was one of the moon's chosen, Elder Thorn continued. That's why she was such a powerful healer, why her remedies worked better than anyone else's. But she fled her pack when she was young, went into hiding. She never told you because she wanted to protect you. Sarah's mind reeled. Her mother had never spoken of her past, had always changed the subject when Sarah asked about her father or her family. If my mother was so special, why did the Shadow Moon Pack treat us like we were nothing? Sarah asked bitterly. Because your mother hid her true nature. She suppressed her powers, used only a fraction of what she could do. She taught you to do the same without even realizing it. Elder Thorn placed a weathered hand on her shoulder. Your alpha rejected you because he thought you were weak. But the truth is, you carry a gift that appears once in several generations. You have the potential to be one of the most powerful healers in all the territories. That's impossible, Sarah whispered. My wolf is small, weak. I can barely shift properly. Your wolf is small because you've been holding her back your entire life, the elder said firmly. Your mother taught you to be invisible, to hide, to make yourself less than you are. It was her way of protecting you, but it crippled your development. He stepped back. I can train you. I can help you unlock what you truly are. But it will be hard, painful even. Are you willing? Sarah thought of Dominic's rejection, of his words, not a healer who can barely shift properly. She thought of every time the pack had overlooked her, dismissed her, treated her like she was worthless. Yes, she said, her voice strong and clear. Teach me everything. Awakening the power. The training began that same day. Elder Thorn took her deep into the forest, to places where the old magic still ran strong. First, you must learn to connect with your wolf properly, he said. Not as two separate beings sharing a body, but as one unified soul. Close your eyes. Sarah obeyed. She could feel her wolf inside her, timid and small as always. Now, instead of commanding her to shift, ask her why she's afraid, Elder Thorn instructed. Sarah had never thought to ask before. She reached inward, and to her surprise, her wolf responded. Images flooded her mind, memories of her mother's fear, of whispered warnings to stay small, stay hidden, don't let them see what you are. She's scared, Sarah whispered aloud. She's been taught to hide. Tell her she doesn't have to hide anymore, the elder said gently. Sarah spoke to her wolf, not in words but in feelings. She poured out her pain from the rejection, her anger at being dismissed, her desperate need to be more. And her wolf responded, unfurling like a flower that had been closed too long. The shift came suddenly. Usually, Sarah's transformations were slow and awkward, but this time her wolf surged forward with power she had never felt before. When the shift completed, Sarah looked down at paws that were larger than before, at fur that gleamed silver in the sunlight. Good, Elder Thorn said, approval in his voice. This is closer to your true form. Now run. Let her show you what she can really do. Sarah ran, and it was like flying. She was faster than she had ever been, more agile. Her wolf howled with joy, finally free after years of suppression. When she shifted back to human form, she was laughing and crying at the same time. That's just the beginning, Elder Thorn said. Now we work on your healing gift. The training intensified. Every day, Elder Thorn pushed her harder. He taught her that healing wasn't just about herbs and medicines, it was about channeling energy, about understanding the life force that flowed through all living things. The moon's chosen can heal wounds that would kill others, he explained. They can cure diseases that have no remedy. But it requires complete control and complete understanding of your power. He made her practice on plants first, teaching her to sense their life energy, to encourage growth or stop decay. Then on small animals with minor injuries. Sarah discovered she could feel the wrongness in a body, could sense exactly where the problem was and how to fix it. One day, a hunter was brought to the village with a terrible wound, a deep gash across his chest that had become infected. The village healers had done what they could, but the man was dying. "Save him," Elder Thorne said simply, standing back. Sarah approached the dying man, her hands trembling. She placed her palms over the wound and reached deep inside herself, to the well of power she had been learning to access. She could feel the infection spreading through the hunter's body like black vines, choking his life force. She pulled on her power, and her hands began to glow with soft silver light. The hunter gasped as the light sank into his wound. Sarah worked for hours, sweat pouring down her face, as she painstakingly destroyed the infection and knitted the torn flesh back together. When she finally pulled her hands away, the wound was closed, pink new skin where there had been rotting flesh. The hunter's color returned, his breathing steadied. He would live. Sarah collapsed from exhaustion, but Elder Thorne was smiling proudly. "You just performed a healing that should have taken a week of conventional treatment. You did it in hours. Do you understand now? Do you see what you truly are? Building reputation." Word of Sarah's gift spread quickly through Silverbrook and beyond. Wolves from neighboring territories began arriving, seeking her help for ailments their own healers couldn't cure. A child with a twisted leg that had never healed properly. A warrior with lung damage from inhaling poison. An elderly woman who had been blind for years. Sarah healed them all. With each healing, she grew stronger, more confident. Her wolf grew larger, her silver fur becoming more vibrant. The timid, overlooked healer from the Shadow Moon pack was transforming into something extraordinary. Elder Thorne introduced her to his network of contacts, other elders, alphas from neutral territories, even some council members. They all treated her with respect, asked for her opinion, valued her knowledge. It was intoxicating after years of being invisible. One evening, as Sarah was organizing her expanding collection of rare herbs, a messenger arrived. He wore the colors of the Eastern Alliance, a coalition of several powerful packs. "Healer Sarah," he said formally, bowing. "I bring an invitation. The Eastern Alliance is hosting a summit of all major packs in 2 months. They've heard of your gifts and request your presence as an honored healer. They also hope you might demonstrate your abilities and share your knowledge." Sarah's heart skipped. A summit of all major packs meant the Shadow Moon pack would be there. Dominic would be there. "I accept," she said calmly, though inside, her emotions were churning. After the messenger left, Elder Thorne studied her. "You'll see him. Again. Your former alpha. Are you ready for that?" "I don't know," Sarah admitted. "Part of me wants to show him what he rejected. Part of me just wants to forget he ever existed." "Both are understandable," the elder said. "But remember this, you're not healing and growing stronger to prove anything to him. You're doing it for yourself. Whatever happens at that summit, hold on to that truth." Letters from the past. One night, unable to sleep, Sarah pulled out her mother's old journals. She had read them before, but only for the healing recipes and plant knowledge. Now, knowing what Elder Thorne had told her, she looked more carefully. Hidden in the margins, written in faded ink, she found notes she had missed before. Not recipes, but warnings and confessions. "Today I felt the pull of my true power, but I pushed it down. I must stay hidden. If they discover what I am, what my daughter might be, we'll never be safe. The Moon's chosen are hunted by those who would use us, enslaved by packs who see us as weapons or tools. I won't let that happen to my Sarah. Better she thinks herself weak than become a target. Forgive me, my daughter. I taught you to hide, to diminish yourself. I thought I was protecting you, but perhaps I only caged you. If you're reading this and I'm gone, know that you are so much more than I ever let you believe." Tears streamed down Sarah's face as she read. Her mother had hidden her power out of love, out of fear. But in doing so, she had condemned Sarah to years of feeling inadequate. The last entry was dated just days before her mother's death. "I'm dying, and I can feel it. My power could save me, but I've suppressed it for so long that I can barely access it anymore. This is my punishment for living a lie. Sarah, if you ever discover what you are, don't make my mistakes. Don't hide your light. Shine as bright as you were meant to. Be everything I was too afraid to be. Sarah closed the journal and held it to her chest, sobbing. She grieved for her mother's fear. For the years both of them had lost hiding from the truth. But she also felt a new determination crystallize inside her. She would honor her mother's final wish. She would shine. She would be everything she was meant to be. And in 2 months, at the summit, everyone, including Alpha Dominic, would see exactly what he had thrown away. The shadow of doubt. As the weeks passed and the summit drew closer, Sarah noticed changes in herself beyond just her growing powers. She stood taller, spoke with more confidence. She no longer instinctively made herself smaller when others entered a room. She met people's eyes instead of looking at the ground. But late at night, doubt still crept in. What if Dominic didn't care that she had grown stronger? What if he just laughed at her, dismissed her again? What if seeing him reopened the wound of rejection that had only just begun to heal? Maya sent letters through traveling merchants, updating Sarah on life in the Shadow Moon Pack. The news was troubling. Elara is not well liked as Luna. She's cruel to the lower-ranking wolves and cares only about increasing her own power. There are whispers that she and Dominic argue constantly. Some say he regrets his choice, though he would never admit it. The pack misses you, Sarah, though most won't say it out loud. We've had 3 serious injuries since you left, and 2 wolves didn't survive. Our new healer doesn't have your touch, your instinct for what's really wrong. I heard Dominic asking about you last week. He wanted to know if anyone had word of where you'd gone. When I refused to tell him, he looked lost. Good. Let him feel a fraction of what he put you through. Sarah read the letters over and over. Part of her felt vindicated. Dominic was suffering consequences for his choice. But another part, the part that remembered the mate bond's warmth, felt only sadness. Elder Thorn found her one evening, staring at Maya's latest letter. Healing others is your gift. Healing others is your gift, he said quietly. But have you healed yourself? Have you forgiven what happened? I don't know if I can, Sarah admitted. How do you forgive someone for making you feel worthless? For rejecting the person you were meant to be with? You don't forgive for them, the elder said. You forgive for yourself. Carrying anger and hurt only poisons your own soul. You can acknowledge the wrong that was done and still release the hold it has over you. I'm not ready, Sarah whispered. Then you're not ready, Elder Thorn said simply. But think about what you want from this summit. Revenge? Vindication? Or simply to move forward into your new life? The answer will determine everything. The final preparation. The week before the summit, Elder Thorn gave Sarah a gift, a beautiful dress of deep midnight blue, embroidered with silver thread that seemed to glow in the light. For the opening ceremony, he explained. You've been living in simple healer's robes for months. It's time to let the world see you as you truly are. Sarah tried on the dress and barely recognized herself in the mirror. The woman looking back at her was poised, powerful, radiant. Her silver-white hair, which she had always hidden in a messy braid, now fell in waves down her back. Her eyes, which had once seemed colorless and plain, now shone with an inner light. I look like someone else, she whispered. You look like yourself, Elder Thorn corrected. Finally. The day before departure, Sarah made one final trip to the stone circle where her training had begun. She sat in the center, her wolf calm and strong inside her, and made a promise to herself. I won't go to this summit seeking revenge, she said aloud. I won't go to prove anything to anyone. I'll go as a healer, to share knowledge and help others. If Dominic is there, if he sees what I've become, that's his burden to carry, not mine. Her wolf agreed, settling peacefully in her chest. Sarah stood and walked back to the village, ready to face her past and embrace her future. Tomorrow, she would leave for the summit. Tomorrow, everything would change again. But this time, she would face it not as a rejected, broken wolf, but as Sarah Winters, one of the Moon's chosen, powerful and whole. Part 3, The Reckoning. The summit begins. The Eastern Alliance territory was magnificent. The summit was being held in a massive natural amphitheater carved into the mountainside, with lodges and pavilions set up for the hundreds of wolves who had traveled from across all the territories. Banners flew in the wind, representing every major pack, and there, among them, was the Shadow Moon standard. Sarah's heart clenched, but she kept her expression calm. She arrived with Elder Thorn and a small delegation from Silverbrook. As they passed through the entrance, Wolf stopped and stared. Word of the powerful healer had spread, but seeing her in person was different. She wore the midnight blue dress Elder Thorn had gifted her, and her silver-white hair flowed freely. She walked with confidence, her head high, no longer the cowering girl who had fled the Shadow Moon pack 6 months ago. "Is that really her?" she heard someone whisper. "The Moon's chosen?" She healed Beta Marcus's daughter when every other healer said it was impossible. "I heard she can cure poison with just a touch." The whispers followed her like a wake. Elder Thorn guided her to the lodging assigned to their delegation, a beautiful pavilion with a view of the entire summit grounds. "Rest," he advised. "The opening ceremony is tonight. That's when all the alphas and their Lunas will be formally presented." "That's when I'll see him," Sarah said quietly. "Yes," Elder Thorn confirmed. "Are you ready?" Sarah took a deep breath. "I have to be." The opening ceremony. The amphitheater was packed as the sun began to set. Torches were lit around the perimeter, casting dancing shadows across the assembled wolves. Sarah sat with the Silverbrook delegation, her hands folded calmly in her lap even though her heart was racing. The ceremony began with speeches from the Alliance leaders, talking about unity and strength. Then came the formal presentations. One by one, alphas were announced, walking to the center of the amphitheater with their Lunas. Alpha Marcus of the Riverrun pack and his Luna, Sophia. Alpha Gareth of the Mountains Claw pack and his Luna, Diana. Each pair was greeted with respectful applause. Sarah watched, her body growing tenser with each announcement. Then she heard it, Alpha Dominic of the Shadow Moon pack and his Luna, Alara. The applause was notably quieter. Sarah's eyes locked onto the center of the amphitheater as Dominic strode forward. He looked the same, tall, powerfully built, commanding. But there was something different in his face, a tightness around his eyes, a weariness. Beside him, Alara walked with her head high, beautiful in a red dress that screamed for attention, but there was a hardness to her smile. They took their place among the other alphas, and Sarah realized Dominic hadn't seen her yet. She was seated far enough away, and the crowd was too large. A strange relief washed over her. After all the alphas were presented, the Alliance leader stood. "We're also honored to have special guests with us. Healers and elders from across the territories who have come to share their knowledge." One by one, the honored guests were called. When Sarah's name was announced, Sarah Winters, of Silverbrook, one of the Moon's chosen, a ripple went through the crowd. She stood and walked gracefully down the steps to the center. Every eye was on her, and for once, the attention didn't make her want to disappear. She belonged here. She had earned this. That's when she felt it. The shock of recognition, the weight of a familiar stare. She looked up, and her eyes met Dominic's across the distance.